Hello and welcome to FGC Philosophy. My name is Tavian Napier and I am the philosopher, and this is where we level up inside and outside the virtual arena. We do that by talking about topics and having guests on the show that I think are going to help us all level up. Today's guest I saw originally on Street Fighter League Season 1, and caught him again on Season 2, really caught my attention as an Akuma player, but not just because of that, but because he would actually meditate in between his matches or sets or rounds. And I found that very fascinating. Other than Takedo, you don't really see too many people doing meditation. So I wanted to take a second to have a conversation with him. So this is that conversation. Thank you and enjoy.
This time we're gonna get funky.
It started with, I used to play Dota 2. Oh, sorry, not Dota 2, but Dota 1. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's a mobile game. Yeah. I played that a lot back in Warcraft 3 in the engine. And my computer died, and I didn't really have anything else to play, so I started playing Third Strike. And that's when I saw the Daigo video parry. And and from there, Street Fighter 4 came out. I played Third Strike. I stopped playing Third Strike because I was bad at it. I didn't know why. I was just really bad at it. And I played Street Fighter 4, and I was bad at that as well. And I was like, how do you get good at this game? And I realized you have to, learn fundamentals and just learn a bunch of things about Street Fighter that you don't really learn from other games. It's because I was only playing FPS games. I was only playing mobile games. And so I learned ST, I learned CVS2, I learned Third Strike. I relearned those games to get better at Street Fighter 4. And the rest was history, man. Like trying to beat your scene, trying to get better in your city, trying to get better in your stage, trying to get better in the whole United States. The whole process, the whole shebang, man. It was great.
That gets into my next topic, which is fundamentals. That's something that's been very elusive to a lot of people in different facets, including myself. So what I want to try to do is go over some of the concepts or applications that cover fundamentals. And I wanted to get your opinion on what those things are and what's missing from that list in terms of fundamentals. So I think the first thing that needs to go on there is execution. Fundamentals and execution, where do those two align? Do you think that's something that is within fundamentals, or is that later on before somewhere in the middle?
It's a little tricky because this is a very subjective topic. Execution to me is a one-player thing. Like it's your call. It's how you do things. Everybody inputs DP maybe a little bit differently. There's little tweaks in our muscle memory that we do. But yeah, that's more of like the one-player side of the game. Mm-hmm. It is an aspect of fundamentals because you have to execute to be fundamentally sound. That ties into you doing things on your own versus fundamentally doing something would be like competing against a low forward or knowing how to place your low forward. It's just like it kind of adds up. It's an essential building block, the fundamental going forward, but it isn't. I feel like it isn't the actual big, the meat of it.
What do you think the biggest component to fundamentals is?
When you truly start learning fundamentals is when you go out there and compete, because you can execute all day, all long, but if you can't do it in an actual game, that's fundamentals right there. You have to be fundamentally sound in your decision making. You have to be fundamentally sound on how you move your character. Just all those things that that happens in a real game, and that's essentially what I think fundamentals are.
I feel like a lot of times, we have frame data, we have all these information, but we don't always, know how to use that information to make us win. And players have good execution. They can do, the other fundamentals, but what makes them lose is lack of awareness of a situation and then adjusting to it because they're not either logically or instinctually figuring out what they need to do. So from your experience with game sense or whatever you may call it, what part of the game do you start to learn that and really apply that and continue to grow that?
Yeah, so game sense essentially is your game IQ. How much do you know about the game? How much do you know about certain situations, and just how much you know about your character and your opponent's character. All these things tie into essentially a result. And so when you're competing against somebody, how good is your game IQ? How good is their game sense? And you can take advantage of that in and outside of the game. So it'd be mentally, breaking them down mentally by doing things that they hate or just abusing things that they can't deal with against their character. Those are the attributes of game sense and game IQ. You can look back into to basketball. How good is a certain player in the game? Everybody has the same ball, right? So how good are they offensively? How good are they defensively? And those are things that are that comes with experience. And the same thing for fighting games. How many times have you been put in a situation? How good is your game sense or game IQ in this particular area of the game. So, for example, if you're down 2 games, can you come back 3 games straight to win grand finals? Things like that. That's what I consider game sense and game IQ. And it's like I said, once again, it's a package because you got to have your fundamentals, you got to have your game knowledge, you got to have your mental game. Those are all things that all tie into everything to one result.
So, from your experience, what did you do to improve your game sense?
Oh man, game sense, knowing frame data, one of the biggest things, because essentially you can lose based off of knowing being 1 frame data off. Like what your sweep was 7 frames versus 8 frames, and you forgot. Things like that. Studying frame data is essentially like you're constantly studying it. I wouldn't say constantly in terms of like you're just constantly looking at it, but you're like when you're playing, you forget things, so you have to remember it, and you forget another thing, and you got to remember it. So it's like just being reminded of the frame data. Another thing is matchup experience, playing different characters, and having the characters down to like, okay, this is my strategy, this is my go-to strategy against this character. And another thing is player matchups. That's different from character matchups. This player likes to do this with their character, so you have to study that. And once you do that, over and over again, you start building this wall of like knowledge that essentially nobody can break it, and sometimes they'll break it, but then that means you just gotta fill in the gaps.
Yeah, and that's kind of the beautiful thing, because I have a little bit of a martial arts background, and I try as much as I can to apply it to fighting games. And it's a good thing when you come across someone who can, break your game sense or, break your logic, because that means there's gaps in your logic, and that's something that can be improved. So it's definitely, from my point of view, it's definitely a good thing when that kind of situation happens, and you want to, play those opponents or figure out like what it is that you did, so that you can kind of build upon your already established game sense.
Dude, losing is an essential building block to getting better. A lot of people just think, I gotta win. No, there's this comic out there on the interweb. It says the biggest winners are the biggest losers. They lose more than you, and that's why they win. That's it. That's it.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I have one person at my locals who takes losing very hard, and so I've been trying to, at least in part when I do interviews, get any advice in terms of like dealing with loss or understanding how people look at it from their point of view. And to dig a little bit deeper into that before we get into our next topic, what have you done, or what is your mindset around losing? Is it something that you had to change your mindset on to be a little bit more healthy, or have you always naturally had a mindset where you look at losing as a positive thing?
Oh no, I was terrible with losing, like really bad. When I was in middle school or high school, I used to play tennis. I was just a little baby rager, like just super mad, hitting balls angrily, slamming my racket and stuff. I was really bad, just really, really bad. That's because I lacked a perspective, and I just lacked knowledge. When you don't know something about a sport or a game, you get frustrated. You're uncomfortable, right? It's very normal. Like, what does this character do? Why is he doing this? I don't. It's very, very frustrating. But if you're in the know, you understand. Okay, this is why he's doing it, and so you have perspective. This is why he's doing this move over and over again, and I can't do anything about it because it's so strong. Okay. The next thing would be using like self-talk and using that's what I did for myself. At least I studied self-talk and knowing how to talk to myself. Before, when I was little, I'd be like, I'm so bad, or this guy's just doing this thing and it's really annoying me, I'm just so upset. Instead of saying that, you can say, okay, this is what he's doing, let me find a different strategy. And it's as simple as saying something differently versus saying something negatively. A lot of players, especially younger players or beginner to intermediate players, they don't have very good self-talk. They talk to themselves very negatively. I've worked with players who are champions who still continue to use self-talk in a negative way, and they don't know about it. They just don't know. So it's a very unexplored topic or a factor in fighting games, I believe.
Yeah, I would have to agree, because I've seen it at different levels. I've talked to, I won't say any names, but like I've seen people win a match and immediately afterward, like they're not, you don't have to be like popping off, in my opinion, after a win, but this person was like beating themselves up more than I thought was healthy in terms of like winning. Like, no, this was bad, that was bad. But at the same time, I think some people at a higher level do make it constructive, but it from what I've studied over the years, and I still try to practice this because it is a practice just like fighting games, the term that I can best translate it to is a Japanese term called kaizen that I learned about from another Street Fighter teacher that I met a long time ago. From what I understand, it loosely translates to incremental growth every day. And I try to apply that mindset to myself and teach it to anyone, any of my clients and stuff like that. A lot of people try to stereotype the like Asian culture, and maybe you can give me some insight on from your point of view. But the term kaizen, I think, is really built into at least the Japanese culture. I don't know much about other Asian cultures, but within Japan, they're really good at certain things because as a culture, it's a mindset, from what I understand, to always try to improve, like better your best, rather than taking it into the ego. You focus more on like what can you objectively do with a situation, rather than even letting it get to you. Like, I mean, you still can be upset because you care about something. You see these players from Japan getting upset, like Takedo losing to Daigo in that first of 10, I think like last year or 2 years ago, and taking that so hard. But he went back and put in that work, and now I believe he won the other first of 10 like a couple of months ago or so. I can't remember exactly when it was. I think it was at Topanga Cup. That's something that I really try to take to heart and think about when I lose, because I definitely hurt sometimes when I lose in tournaments and stuff like that. But then you have to say, okay, let's talk to yourself. Like, this is part of the process. What did I do wrong? Let's watch the VODs. It might hurt to watch the VODs, but being uncomfortable means that I'm doing something right. I think being out of your comfort zone is where you do grow personally. So I think what you're saying aligns perfectly with what I've done research on and practiced, and what I see a lot of other successful people healthily doing with failure.
Yeah. So the thing that you're talking about in terms of Asians, I guess, because I'm Asian. I'm Cambodian and one Chinese, and so I call it the Asian expectations. It's really not like an Asian thing. It's just the way you're raised. And it's funny that we talk about. I mentioned that is because the way we do things now is how we were raised, and it's such we don't think about it, but the things that we did when we were little, that's how our brain developed. Those are our habits. And so if your parents were, like, hey, you gotta do this, gotta do that, you start to think, okay, this is how I'm supposed to do things. And when you grow up, you're like, okay, well, this is how I have to do things in fighting games. And so your friend or your one of your training partners that is just constantly so negative after he wins or loses or however he does, he's acting a perfectionist sort of mentality. Like, I have to play perfectly, otherwise it's no good. And that goes back all the way down to his childhood. I can't really say that for 100%, but like it's a factor in a sense.
Yeah.
I know nothing about the person. I'm just from what I've heard, but that's essentially what happens. Is like the way you were raised, or there's something happened to you, and you have to play perfect, and you have to abide by certain rules or fundamentals that you think are perfect, and that's just not healthy. Not healthy at all.
Yeah, definitely. I do agree. A lot of times it's somewhere along the childhood, or like along the way you develop some sort of habit, either by how you're raised or the opposite of how you're raised, or like self-defense mechanisms. Usually it's one or the other, where you take on what your parents taught you, or you reject it and you develop bad habits of your own, or some mixture of the two. It's definitely accurate for most situations. And then you over time, maybe you're on your own, you still develop bad habits, and those definitely can translate to playing games. And I've seen that in myself with I learn things really quickly, but then I get bored once things get challenging. So I had to find a way to push through just natural talent into the skill area, because the talent only takes you so far if you're not putting in the work. And a lot of people, I think, suffer from that same issue of the boring stuff is actually the thing that's usually going to make you a lot better. The thing that's uncomfortable, like sitting in the training room and doing things repetitively until it's like instinct almost. It's like ultra instinct, like you're Goku or something. Those are the things that are going to, from what I've seen, take you take you further, rather than just trying to do the cool thing or the thing that you think feels right.
The zone, essentially, you're talking about how to get in the zone. And when something is just too difficult, you're going to have a lot of anxiety. There's this chart online showing this in a graph, in a sense. So too much pressure creates too much anxiety. If the task is too easy, it creates boredom. So you have to find a medium, and that's where you find the zone. And that's when you can play something or do something for hours and hours and still just keep wanting to do it. And that's when the fun aspect comes into play, because when you're not having fun, it's not, it's not something that you want to look forward to doing. And for me personally, the way I practice, the way I train, I've done it. I've studied myself and how I practice, and it's fun. I enjoy it a lot. I'm ready to always get into it every single day if I wanted to. And everybody's different. They find their own zone or flow state, and how they practice or even how they compete.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the flow state and mindsets, one of the things that really, really caught my attention was the meditation aspect of it. And I want to know where you are right now with your meditation journey, but also how that played into your competitive play in Street Fighter.
So I didn't really know it until I studied it and read it more. But I have anxiety. I didn't know it. I just thought I'm just not good at competitor, but I have anxiety. And people are like, oh, how do you have anxiety? You do so well. Well, I mean, you don't know what's going on inside my head. And there's a lot of professional athletes that have anxiety. I forgot what his name was. I think it's George St. Pierre. I don't know. It's one of those MMA fighters.
UFC, yeah.
He has really bad anxiety, but he's a champion. And how does he manifest that a champion out of so much anxiety that he has? Probably because of the way he mentally prepares himself and things like that. Or he could be just super physically talented. I don't know. But for me, because we're in a mental game, we're not really in a physical game. It is physically, demanding in terms of like duration. But mentally, you have to prepare those things to be even 1% better than your opponent. And so resetting yourself using meditation, getting focused, and using self-talk, all those things are, to push away all the things that are sort of giving you negative vibes or giving you negative self-talk, and just focusing on the game, focusing on your opponent, focusing on the character in front of the screen. And every single time, it's just a hard reset. I wouldn't say like, it's an automatic, like, this is what's going to happen and then I'm going to be perfectly fine. No, it's a mental battle, obviously. But meditation helps it and a lot for me personally, because the anxiety will come back. So you're thinking about like, okay, can I do this? Can I win? But you shouldn't be asking yourself those questions. You should be like, all right, I beat him before, I got to just do it again. Things like that, and the meditation helps with that.
Yeah, it almost sounds like a mental anchor between rounds or matches where you can pull yourself back, because a lot of information is going to happen between those 2 to 3 rounds of a match, and sometimes having a mental anchor to get you back on track in terms of your focus and what your strategy is. It sounds like it's really useful to be able to bring yourself back, and like you said, to like a reset rather than continuing on with the mindset that you currently have.
Yeah. So it takes a lot of practice. It's not something that somebody can just do and be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be godlike. No, it's not going to happen. It's going to take a lot of time. I will say to those who are competing at locals to do it at the locals. I'm very lucky to have a very strong local. I have competitors who are always trying to compete for my head. They're trying to compete for every single round, every single hit, everything. They want to beat me, and that's great. I love that. So I'm there to compete. I'm also there to try things. I'm practicing my breathing, practicing my self-talk, whether it be from a long day of work, go in there and try to win. Go in there with a different strategy. It's like my gym. You go in there, you practice. Like it's like kind of like you're a boxer. You go in there, you're practicing different things with your sparring partners, and that's transfer. That's if you're practicing that way, that's how you're gonna compete in tournament. And when you have that atmosphere around you, and everybody's getting better, it's a great way to improve, man. Yeah, and you practice things inside and outside the game.
Okay. So a couple of things I thought about, because I try to meditate when I'm in my, or I do meditate when I'm in my matches, and I've noticed a lot of people will, the term, I'm a little bit older, I'm 32, and this term isn't in my like vocabulary like that I use on a regular basis, but memeing, which I guess is like the new, joking around. But like,
Wait, how old do you think I am?
How old or what?
How old do you think I am?
28.
I'm 31.
Oh, okay. So you may have seen this too, but like one of the things that like made me think about this question was that people start. I breathe pretty loudly when I try to like calm myself down because I'm taking breaths and I don't always close my eyes, but I try to at least get my breathing right and really make sure that my heart rate is like I'm not panicking or anything like that. And they'll start joking about that. I personally don't care because I've lived long enough being shy that I don't care anymore about that. But for you, like your observations of like meditation is not a normal thing in American culture. So there's people who are going to think you're weird or like strange or find it funny. Like, what is your experience with the outside perception, like the other people's perception of it, and how do you deal with that? What they think of what you're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so this is a typical sports psychology of not letting your opponent get in your head before the match. So when I'm doing my routine and people are like taking pictures or making a video of me and laughing, whatever, and just like making jokes, I don't care. I don't care because what's it to them what I do, to beat their ass? If I beat you, it don't matter, So you can laugh all you want, but if I beat you, who gets the last laugh? Or if you're making comments about what I'm doing, what happens when I beat you? I don't know. I'll do whatever it takes to beat you, and if that means breathing and practicing good self-talk and just like motivating myself and doing things that will better myself in the long term, in the long run, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be a long-term competitor. I'm not here for just Street Fighter 5. I'm here to be a long-term competitor, and that's taking care of my body, taking care of my mental state. Like this is something that you want to do even in your job. Like you mentioned how this is not an American thing. I believe I've read a little bit of articles on it where people they didn't really believe it in a sense, and when it got brought into American culture, they used it for business. Some of the best businesses use it, and they're successful. Phil Jackson used it on the Chicago Bulls and the Lakers, and look how successful they were. You know what I'm saying? So those are things that people don't really know about because they don't have any knowledge about it. When it gets brought into, for example, the FGC, they say, "Oh, that's just that doesn't work" or whatever. They haven't even tried it.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of high level people, like tennis players, because there's different variations of meditation as well. Because you have like your visualization, you have your mindfulness, like all different kinds of meditation that have different benefits from doing them. The thing with meditation that I've seen is that in order to do it, like anything else, in order to get the benefits from it, you have to actually do it consistently for an extended period of time. Which gives me to my next question: is how do you get past that frustration barrier? Because I experienced it multiple times after like I stopped meditating. When I first started doing meditating, I hear it from other people saying, "Oh, I tried it. It's too hard." How long did you do it? A couple of days. What? So like, what advice do you have for people who like that may have said they tried meditation or they think that they can't meditate, something along those lines?
So the beauty about meditation is that's free. There's no subscriptions. There's no monthly payments. You do it for free. Okay, and all it is breathing. The air is free for now, at least. So. But honestly, it all comes down to repetition, and you practice it. You practice what you preach. You can't just say like, "Oh yeah, I did this and whatever." You practice what you preach, and also you can't just do it at one time and feel frustrated. What are you doing wrong? What are you doing? Are you forcing it? Are you trying really hard to get in the zone? This is something that's supposed to come naturally. And that's why you have to practice it. And I'm very thankful to be able to practice it during high-level matches, during tournament pressure, and even in locals. Like I put myself in situations where, okay, I'm down 2-0, I got to come back. So I'm going to practice my breathing. I'll practice it even outside of it, before I sleep, when I wake up sometimes. Those things that you got to try. You got to try those things. I'm going to try to practice breathing while there's hella loud music or there's people just yelling at you and stuff like that. Those are things that you have to, and remember, meditation is just breathing, right? But it isn't. It's about acknowledging the things around you and accepting it, but then going back to your breathing. But if you can't accept those things, you're like, I'm trying to force myself to go back to breathing, then that's not going to happen. You can't force it. You have to let it happen naturally. It's like getting in the zone. You can't just force getting in the zone. It has to happen naturally. And that comes with practice, routine, and just executing it naturally. That makes any sense.
From what I've researched in my own experience, because I'm kind of on my own meditation journey again, because I fell off of it in terms of like, I used to be able to meditate for a half an hour consistently. Like I was like a hippie living in San Diego, just like I could do it for a long time. My life has gotten a lot more busy. It's gotten a lot more hectic, and I've fallen off my meditation and have been getting back into it now. And I come across those same things, but it's just a matter of practice, because you have to be able to get good enough to identify the issues. For me, like I was diagnosed with ADD around 17 years old, and I didn't really believe in that sort of thing. But as I've gotten older, my attention span is definitely a struggle in fighting games and out of fighting games to be able to maintain attention to one specific thing. And so meditation was the first thing to really help. Exercise and meditation, I should say, because a combination of the two was like really amazing for me. And that stillness that I got and that ability to think on a deeper level was something that was both easy and hard to attain, because you have to be able to pay attention to like your thought processes. You know, hey, I'm thinking about this grocery list and this song and this thing that's stressing me out and this other thing that's stressing me out, but I'm going to acknowledge that they're there and then bring myself back to the present. Like, what does my body feel like? What is my breathing like right now? What is the movement of my chest, the sounds that I'm hearing, all these kinds of things that really bring me to the present, acknowledging them, but not giving attention to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Try to get as many people to at least try it out as possible, as much as possible. And I swear by it. I think it's something that is going to help them reach a higher level of themselves, if that makes any sense. Because I want to see people, be less anxiety. I want to see those kinds of people grow. So on top of everything that you said, closing statements, what advice can you give in terms of improving at fighting games and just improving in your mental composure overall?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned exercise and mental stability and meditation and the combination of the two, because I feel like, we're in the era of esports, competitive gamers, professional gamers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, they just play games sometimes. They just play games, play for like 8 hours, whatever. I don't know how many hours they play. Maybe Korean players will play that many hours, but like they'll play extensive hours of gameplay and they won't take care of their mental state. They might even not even take care of their physical state. So my belief, my personal opinion is that, these gamers, they're not even the most optimal gamers we have. Even the best gamers right now, I don't think they're the most optimal at all.
Mm-hmm.
We're like 80% probably. I don't know, 75%. What's missing is the physical, training, the nutritional practices of eating well and eating healthy, and obviously the mental state. Now, when you look at basketball, you know who's out there and who's killing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know exactly who's out there and killing it, and they're optimal. They're super optimal. But in games, because in games also there's a lot of changes, patches, or different versions or different Street Fighters, whatever. So that's a factor. That's going to change your playing field. But how do you control, the outside of that? That's nutrition. That's mental, practicing mental things, and also exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have all those three things going for you, it doesn't matter what changes happen. It doesn't matter what happens to your character, or whatever patch comes out. Still the same just a different game. You just gotta adapt. So you gotta be sharp. You gotta be in shape. It's a mental battle, man. You're running a marathon. And you gotta be ready. People don't run marathons with no food, right?
Mm-hmm.
No exercise, no preparation. You run a marathon with no training, you're screwed. Your legs are gonna get screwed up, super screwed up afterwards. So yeah. But those of you out there looking to get better outside the game, man. Like do your homework. Make sure you're eating well. Make sure you're sleeping well. Make sure you're drinking enough water and all those things. Make sure your sugar intake is not too crazy. Make sure your numbers are good for macros, carbs, fats, proteins, whatever you want to do. You're not looking to be a bodybuilder. You're not looking to be a super elite athlete in terms of physicality. You're looking to be the strongest mental person out there, because it's a marathon. If you're competing in a fighting game, you're trying to beat somebody's ass. That's it, mentally. So yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for this information. I love talking about this kind of stuff, and it's really exciting to see people who are at a higher level really taking and internalizing all of these concepts. So I really appreciate that. And the last thing for me is, where can people find you? Like, what do you have going on, like social media, that kind of stuff? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Samurai FGC on Twitter, and also XSK_Samurai on Twitch. I haven't been streaming it at all because I'm working from home. home and new apartment, and just a lot of things are happening right now that are just not in the favor of streaming. It's not a priority right now, but I want to start streaming more, but I'm looking for the right time. Obviously, anytime is the right time, but for me personally, I have certain goals that I want to do. But yeah, there as well. And also, I believe on Instagram, Miky, Chea, Samurai FGC there as well. That's it.
Cool. All right. Well, again, my name is The Philosopher. Thank you guys so much for listening to this, wherever you're listening to it, whether it be on YouTube or on any podcasting app. Thank you. Make sure you guys follow. Let us know what your thoughts are. If you meditate, give us some viewpoints from your point of view in terms of like your meditation journey, because I would greatly love to hear people who are meditating in the FGC. And then lastly, we do online locals. We stream it on my channel over at twitch.tv/philosopher. You can check that out, or you can join the online locals if you want to be a part of that. We do Street Fighter, Tekken, Blaze Blue, was it Grand Blue Versus, and then I'm missing one other game, but we have links down in the description down below, so make sure you guys check that out. But until then, thank you guys so much, and I will see you all in the next one.